Welcome to J is for Justice podcast. If live breaking news and following true crime is your thing, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you like what you see in my videos, please consider giving them a thumbs up. Hello, everyone. Happy Hump Day. It is Hump Day here at J is for Justice. Wednesday. We've made every day a J day here. So welcome, Dmitry, to the panel. Welcome, everyone in chat.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk with us about these cases we're all obsessed with.
Yep. Anytime. Love being here. Always love being here, really.
What do you think of true crime followers?
You know, it seems like over the past few years, it's really picked up. I mean, I was talking to a guy on my channel, Michael Finkel. He's a true crime writer. And we talked about this. It's like people are enamored by this stuff. I get it. I mean, I watch it myself. I love this stuff. I watched American Justice with Bill Curtis when I was a kid. You know, I love this stuff. I could tell why people really like it. I get into it myself, and I'm in it, and it's still so compelling to me. I think it's great.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love it.
And people like you, you know, you're just like this, you're like this gem that we can bring on to get, you know, you're like this gem in this true crime genre where we can get some common sense and like bring us back down to earth, right? Because we can get wrapped up in these conspiracies.
I appreciate that. I don't know if I'd agree with you, but I appreciate it.
Well, you're much appreciated here. So what we're going to talk about today is, again, the Delphi case. We went over that one before, you know.
Sure.
That one is a mess. There's a lot that went on. So I put together a 5-minute clip to give it the full context, because I don't think I could properly do it. So in order for you to get the full context of the steps, because they've been kicked off the case. So the judge said they're stating that they were basically strong-armed, and now it's gone to the Supreme Court. So there's just a lot of legal stuff that I think it would be just much better if you watched it yourself.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go, guys. And get your questions ready. Get them going in chat. I will be pinning them. And make sure that you go to the description of this video, or one of the moderators I saw, Shell, already put Dimitri's link in the chat. Dmitry has his own YouTube. He's got some very interesting interviews already up on that channel. So you're going to want to subscribe to him and check out his other videos. So he's got a lot more to offer than just what we see here. So thank you again, Dmitry, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I love coming on here every time.
Yay. Okay, here we go. Here's your background.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Can you hear okay?
Perfect.
We on? All right, we are on the record in State of Indiana versus Richard Allen, 08C012210MR1. Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. McClellan, Mr. Luttrell, for your patience. We've had an unexpected turn of events, ladies and gentlemen. Earlier this afternoon, the defense attorneys have withdrawn their representation of Mr. Allen. Mr. Baldwin made an oral motion to withdraw. I granted that oral motion to withdraw, and Mr. Rosie will be submitting a written motion to withdraw, I'm assuming within the next couple of days. They have confirmed with the court that Mr. Allen's financial situation remains static, meaning he is continuing to be entitled to appointed counsel. I will reach out to public defenders to make that appointment. As Mr. Allen is now without counsel, I've ordered him transported back to the Department of Correction. Mr. McClellan, I know that we have already scheduled a hearing in the Carroll Circuit Court October 31st at 9 a.m. I'd like to maintain that hearing if we can, please. I think at that point we can have counsel appointed. I'd like to set a new trial date. Obviously, I don't believe counsel will be prepared within the next couple of months to try a case of this magnitude in January. So we'll set dates for the trial. I think we need to set a date as well for the suppression hearing that was filed now by former counsel. I have asked the attorneys to provide all of the discovery previously provided back to the state of Indiana. I know I entered a protective order on the discovery, and honestly, I don't remember when that was. I think it was in April of this year, perhaps, maybe sooner. But the attorneys have been ordered to provide all of that discovery back to the state. And if you would maintain that until such time as it can be turned over to successor counsel, I would appreciate that, Mr. McClelland. I've also asked the defense attorneys to cooperate with successor counsel. They're not required to do that, but I think that they will in the best interests of Mr. Allen. They're not required to provide any of their work product, but they will be required and have indicated that they will cooperate with successor counsel. So obviously, without counsel, Mr. Allen's hearing cannot proceed. I apologize that I know many of you have been waiting for several hours. I know, Mr. McClelland, you and your staff, and you had some witnesses here that came earlier to have the hearing, but clearly this is outside of our control. So is there anything, Mr. McClelland, that you'd like to state for the record?
No, Your Honor, I think we can address the other issues at the October 31st court date.
All right.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Do you have any comments so far?
Oh man, whenever these things happen, it's horrible. Withdrawal of counsel in the middle of a case like this is tough. If the withdrawal came earlier in the case, that's one thing. But withdrawal in the middle of a case oftentimes won't get granted unless it's something very severe, right? Unless the client, for example, doesn't want his lawyers on the case. But the problem with these kinds of cases, oftentimes, really, it's money. That's what leads to a withdrawal, right? If you're a lawyer in the middle of a case like this, you have to make sure that whatever you want to be paid, you're paid at some point in advance so that you don't have to worry about withdrawing in the middle. Judges typically don't like to hear that lawyers want to withdraw because of money. So there usually has to be some other reason, either a conflict or a disagreement with the client, something like that.
Well, let me remind you that this is the same case that the crime scene photos were leaked, and then the man offed himself that was involved in the leak somehow. But okay, keep going. Sorry, I just wanted to make you aware of that. That was we don't know if that was the basis of this, but that's really all we know.
Yeah, withdrawals are tough mid-case. They're tough mid-trial. And so the fact that this happened means there must have been some severe reason, some possible severe consequence for these lawyers.
So it was also stated that they had this meeting in chambers. Is there a specific reason why you think they wouldn't have done this in an open hearing in open court?
Yes, sometimes what happens is, and not sometimes, it actually happens relatively often, when a lawyer withdraws from a case, the ethics rules state that the lawyer has to withdraw without prejudicing the client as much as possible. And so one way lawyers do that is they say, Judge, I'm withdrawing for X and Y reason. If you want more detail, then we'd have to do that in camera. And what that means is alone with the judge, so the public and the other lawyers don't hear what's happening, right? And can somehow use that to their advantage. So whenever lawyers withdraw from representing a client, there's a reason for it that obviously may make the client look bad. That's the whole point, right? For whatever reason. And so you got to make sure to protect the client. I do it in every case where I'm seeking withdrawal.
Okay. All right, let's watch this next clip. This is the next happening.
An attorney for Richard Allen is fighting to stay on the case and accusing the judge of ambushing him and a fellow defense attorney. Last week in the Delphi murders trial, Judge Fran Gull announced defense attorneys Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rosie would be withdrawing themselves from the case. Now, Rosie filed a motion to continue his representation of Allen, claiming the court ambushed him and Baldwin, placing them in a compromising position. Along with his filing to retain representation for Allen, Rosie has asked the Indiana Supreme Court to step in and remove Gull from the case, questioning her impartiality.
Over the
Okay, that's the second one. So they're stating, hey, we didn't want to step off of this case. We were strong armed.
Well, but then it's not a withdrawal, right? If they wanted to stay on the case, then the judge removed them. And it's not a withdrawal. That's a totally different kind of thing. If the judge sees in a case some impropriety, such as perhaps a conflict of interests, right, that arose, the judge is within that judge's right to replace the lawyer. But don't forget, we have a right to counsel in this country, particularly in criminal cases. So if a judge is taking a lawyer off of a criminal case, it must be real serious.
That was going to be my next question for you, because Richard Allen, the defendant, actually filed a motion stating he wanted them to remain as his counsel. And then they're also saying, we want to remain on his case. But the judge is like, nope, that's final. It's done. New lawyers have been brought in now. But does this strike you as something out of the ordinary? Is this something you've seen happen before, where attorneys, the judge says that they remove themselves, but that really wasn't the whole story? Like, what do you think they're trying to, what kind of picture are they trying to paint here?
I don't remember if I've seen it. If I have, not often. It happens virtually never, right? If the lawyer wants to stay on the case and the client wants the lawyer to stay on the case, a judge will, again, virtually never remove a lawyer. Now, we don't know why this happened, right? And one thing judges want to make sure they protect is the verdict, right? And one thing they're thinking about always is, if I let a ruling, if I render a ruling, will this ruling be a basis to, for some reason, vacate the conviction or appeal the case later on? Now, we don't know what the reasoning behind this was, right? We don't know all the details. But if the judge thought that, hey, if I let these guys stay on the case, the defendant, if he's convicted, will then try to use something related to these lawyers to vacate his conviction down the line. And judges don't want that. So, again, if it's something super severe, right, typically this will arise in a conflict of interest setting, right? Typically what will happen is the lawyer will, at some point, for some reason, give rise to facts that makes it look that the lawyer isn't entirely committed to the client and maybe committed to other things in the case. Maybe he represented a witness. Maybe he has personal interest, business, whatever. Then the judge will certainly deal with that, because what may happen down the line is the client may use that and say, well, look, I had these lawyers stay on the case. I didn't know X, Y, and Z, or I did know, maybe not to the degree that it was. And so now I want my conviction vacated, because if I had different lawyers who didn't have these issues, I would be acquitted, right? That's the soup to nuts version. And that is possibly what happened here.
And that makes sense, because her statement where she told Mr. Allen, I just cannot let these attorneys represent you. I just can't. So it doesn't sound to you like, I've seen people commenting about this judge has got to be crooked. There's some kind of sideways stuff going on. I mean, there's no sideways stuff going to go on when it's going up to the Supreme Court level, right?
Yeah, we've this is something I've discussed with you before, right? Before you levy an allegation against a judge like that, you got to have real good evidence, not just kind of circumstantial, subjective beliefs. You know, have there been judges who have been corrupt? Yes, it happens never. And you know, the penalties for a judge doing that are so severe that you can't jump to that conclusion. Not even close.
Right, because very rarely even do we have like Supreme Court judges that might even be shady in their personal life, but they keep it straight and narrow in the courtroom. They're able to do that, even though they might be a little shady. So I think that it's taken more serious than some people, you know, that are following the cases. They think that it's just willy-nilly, like, oh, this judge might just be crooked, like a defense attorney.
Yeah. Again, are judges crooked? Sometimes, yes. Are lawyers crooked? Sometimes, yes. The percentage of times that happens is very, very, very low.
And it's important to remember too that this Judge Gull, was brought in. The last judge was removed, or I don't know if he recused himself. I don't remember, but he was gone. They brought her in as a special judge. And now to hear like people doubting her versus these lawyers that actually allowed crime scene photos to be accessed by someone who had, the intention to spread them around to YouTubers. So I think that already I was questioning the lawyer's ethics versus the judge in this case. I have no reason to doubt the judge.
Yeah, and look, again, right? The times that this kind of stuff happens is very rare. I mean, you can't really, when it comes to lawyers, when it comes to judges, it happens so rarely that you can't jump to that conclusion right away unless there's really, really strong evidence. And by the way, it happens sometimes. I have it in my cases sometimes where judges take on a case or are assigned a case and they say, okay, for whatever reason, I can't be on this case. Let me move it to another judge. That happens all the time. What doesn't happen all the time is judges, taking the law into their own hands. I mean, that happens never.
And especially in a high profile case where all eyes are on this. Right?
Yeah, and that's another part of it, right? Like, this is a case that the whole world is watching, or at least part of the world is watching, right? And every little thing will be analyzed and criticized, and and folks will draw connections that aren't necessarily there. And we all have to be careful with, stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. And that's like I said in the beginning, that's why I like bringing you on to kind of bring us back down to earth, so to speak. So here is our last clip. This is what the judge did after they said we still want to be his counsel. And they actually showed up. I think one of them showed up at the 31st hearing where the new lawyers were. Like, we're still his counsel. So it was weird.
Trial of Delphi double murder suspect Richard Allen. Special Judge Fran Gull issued 3 orders today. She issued a response to a series of motions filed Thursday by Allen's now former defense attorney Brad Rosie. According to Gull, Rosie verbally withdrew himself from the case on October 19th. Yesterday, he requested to stay on Allen's counsel and also filed to have Judge Gull removed from the case. In her order today, Gull also said Rosie is no longer counsel of record and ordered his filings to be stricken from the record. Judge Gull also named 2 Fort Wayne attorneys as Allen's new public defenders. And in a change from the last hearing, Gull said she will not allow cameras inside the courtroom for the next hearing, which is set for Tuesday in Carroll County. She cited issues with unauthorized filming and broadcasting of pre-hearing activities as her reason why. We do hope to learn more about this on Tuesday. Allen is charged with the murder.
So that's that. What are your thoughts as a whole on that?
The lawyers that are removed from the case, the judge has an argument to say that you now have no position in the case and you can't file anything in the case. As it relates to the media, the media is going to be a problem in all these kinds of cases, right? There is always a difficulty in navigating media, especially these days in these kinds of cases. And the arguments are twofold. Some folks say, well, it's good that we have this, right, so that nothing gets by anybody. And then the other people say, well, look, it's not good because the media can bias a jury and impact a case in a negative way, prejudice a defendant. So those media discussions, they will never end for any case, right? It's kind of like a discussion that nobody can ever win.
Thanks for answering that. So here's the next one from Meg P. Question: can people who are not yet convicted wear shoelaces in jail and or prison and are not on suicide watch?
Well, it's a great question. The primary focal point in that debate is whether or not they're in front of the jury, right? You can make a prisoner look really any way that you want, really, if that prisoner is not in front of the jury, because the jury is the one that can't be prejudiced. Once you're in front of the jury, right, you have to make the prisoner not look like a prisoner because that may prejudice the minds of the jurors, right? That's why if you ever watch a trial, you'll never see a trial generally with a prisoner sitting in prison in garb unless there's a reason for it, right? You see in other countries, they have people sit behind cages and stuff. We don't have that here.
Well, he was in the prison jumpsuit. They're just, I think, taken back because the tennis shoes had laces.
But that's all a part of it, right? The laces, everything else helps paint a picture of a guilty person, right? Of somebody with whom there is something wrong, right? Let's put it that way. And that's a big no-no when you're in front of the fact finder.
People, look at, they've been worried about these shoelaces for
Yeah.
days. The things that won't allow us to sleep at night. I saw another question right here. Mike Sanner. Are outgoing attorneys barred from publicly releasing info given by defendant, and are they required to turn over evidence to the new attorneys?
Great question. Outgoing lawyers must preserve their client's interests to a reasonable degree. They cannot prejudice the client. Of course, they can't publicly release attorney-client privileged information or confidential information. That's a big deal. And they are required to cooperate with new counsel to a reasonable degree, right? For example, sending your file, right? Or at least the permissible elements of your file. Cooperating to catch up the new lawyer as to what has been happening. That they're required to do. They're not required to go crazy, right? They're just required to make sure that they're handing the client off in a way that doesn't hurt the client. That's the short answer.
Is there any reason why they would be filing? Like, why didn't this is what I guess perplexes me, right? Is that they had this meeting with the judge and then they're off the case, but then they just don't go away. Is it that nobody really knows what happened and maybe they're trying to save their reputation from, this leak that came out with the crime scene photos and stuff? I mean, what do you think their career is going to look like after something like this?
Well, their career will look what their career will look like will depend on why this happened and the degree to which that will come out. They're in really, really difficult territory because now that they're out of the case, it's very hard to take any active steps that relate to the case in any way. You understand? Because now they're former counsel. They're under an obligation to make sure that they're not prejudicing their client. They're not as intimately involved in the case as they once were, obviously. So they may not even know what prejudicing the client is at this point, right? And that'll change as the case progresses because they'll be out of the loop. So they're in real dangerous territory in terms of making extrajudicial statements to the press, doing things like that, because, they come out of a case in which they have to make sure that to the degree possible, they still protect their client.
So the fact that it's gone up to the Supreme Court level, the judge has asked for more time to respond. Do you think there's a chance that this judge could get removed since Mr. Allen wants these lawyers and they also want to represent him? Is there even a chance that the judge could be removed and a new judge brought in and he gets the counsel he wants?
Judges don't get removed for making legal decisions. Judges get removed for some impropriety, right? Judges get removed if they're biased. Judges get removed if they have an interest in the case that they didn't disclose and it comes out and now they can't any longer be a judge on the case. Judges don't get removed for making decisions that one or the other party doesn't agree with, because obviously every ruling will be one that one or the other party doesn't agree with, right? Being a judge who makes even wrong legal rulings or bad legal rulings doesn't get you removed. It's not about so much incompetence, if there is any here. It's more about bias. That's why judges are removed.
Which means what exactly? What does that exactly mean?
Which means that as long as there is an argument that the judge can make here that shows why she removed these lawyers, she won't be removed from the case.
So in other words, they might be asking for something that's going to be let out of the bag that maybe they wouldn't want out of the bag.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. For sure.
Mike Sanner wants to know if they'd have to go to appeal court.
Well, this is the appeal court, right? So they made a decision. They would make a decision in front of the judge, and then it would go up and up and up the chain until it exhausts the legal remedies.
Oki says, I think the judge should be removed because of bias, but we don't even know what happened. So how can we make that judgment?
Yeah, you gotta. I mean, guys, just so you know, you understand what's happening here. You have to prove these things. You can't just say bias and say that I don't like the rulings and therefore it's biased. That's not enough. You have to give specific facts as to why the judge is biased, right? Saying that the judge is biased, for example, because there were 50 objections made last week and she overruled 49 of them, doesn't make her biased. You have to show that there's something specific involved in the case.
I just don't understand what could possibly be, underlying that she would be biased about.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, that's the tough thing, right? Judges, like lawyers, have codes of ethics, and you can read those codes of ethics, and they're very long, and there are a whole bunch of rules in place as to what these folks can do. And a violation of really any one of them is enough to have a judge make this ruling.
So I don't know anything about this, but a couple people are saying in the chat that the attorney general is not representing the judge in this case. I didn't know if that was even, I don't even know what that entails.
Yeah, I mean, I see where they're coming from. A judge isn't really a party to anything. So the judge doesn't require representation. The judge just requires kind of a position to be heard, right? But what will happen is the prosecution won't represent the judge. They will represent their interests. And in this case, perhaps their interest will align with the judge's interests, right? So the judge isn't a party to the case. A judge doesn't hire a lawyer and do these things.
I guess they released a statement saying they wouldn't be representing her.
Again, they would never be representing her. They would be representing their side, which sometimes would align with what judges' arguments are, right? In any one of these cases, when one side makes a legal argument and the judge decides on that legal argument, naturally, one of the sides will agree with the judge, right? So the interests are often aligned, but that doesn't mean that the judge needs a lawyer, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So the lawyers have a lawyer.
What do you mean? The lawyer's probably
lawyers. Yeah, they have their own lawyer.
Well, the lawyer's probably. You mean the lawyers that were taken off the case?
Yeah, they have their own lawyer.
Okay, they can either hire their own lawyer to do this, or they could do it themselves.
Yeah, they actually had one that came to court with them that day that they were removed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we don't have too much time left. This went by fast. So I want to move on to the Idaho case.
Yep.
I don't have a video or anything on this, but they went back to, so what happened was the trial is, there's no trial date right now. We're just waiting for one. So in the meantime, when that was decided that it would be, I don't know if it's stayed like officially, but nothing's happening right now. So anywho, the FBI has gone back to the home, which the house was gifted by the owner to the university, which I thought that was kind of odd, but nonetheless, they gifted the house to the university and they're going to demolish it. So I know there's, reasons for that, being in the college town, like these students have to see this murder house every day, walking to class and all that. But they've decided to hold off on the demolition. And the FBI went in for a second time with those FARA scanner things, right? Have you worked with those? Like have you had like 3D images of crime scenes?
They're often not necessary.
Okay, so in this case, they were in there in the very beginning doing the scanner, and then they've removed all the personal items and all that. Well, they went back in. So everyone's like, whoa, and the university let them go in for 2 days. So they had 48 hours to go in there, and they had all those scanners out, and they said they were putting it together because Brian Koberger initially, the trial was going to happen in October, and they said they didn't have time to put together what they wanted to put together. So I guess my first question is, what are your thoughts on these 3D scans versus having a jury walk through a crime scene? I mean, when did that happen last? OJ?
Well, that did happen in that case. But it does happen sometimes. It happens, again, these things are unusual, right? But it's not so much about the jury coming in. You should preserve evidence in a case like this if you can, right? The countervailing interest that college students shouldn't be looking at this and may freak them out. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I do. I get that. But, this is a trial and it's a criminal case where a person can go to jail for a long time, right? If not forever. So, you got to make sure the evidence is preserved so that the defense could take a look at it and all this other stuff.
So, do you think that there's a benefit to the 3D scan versus going in real life?
No, you always want to there is even something in the rules about this. The original evidence is always the best evidence, right? All these other things, they help analyze and evaluate and all that other stuff. And that's great. But you always want access to the original evidence. And that house may be the original evidence. You don't want to get rid of that and then have that create an issue.
This is kind of a weird question, but did they already do the crime scene cleanup stuff? They don't let that set, do they?
No, well, they shouldn't. There's a very
Mm-hmm.
useful. Go ahead.
What do they do?
They have specialists come in to
Right.
preserve the evidence, and then the evidence has to be subjected to what's called a chain of custody, so that there's an obvious kind of link as to what happened with the evidence, so that it's not compromised. Right? If it's compromised, it may not be brought into the case, and if it is brought into the case, a lawyer can get up in front of a jury and say, we can't trust this evidence because it's been compromised. We don't know what happened in between, these hours and these hours. And it's
That's
important.
why they have all those red tags, right, on the doors and windows. Every time they're opened,
you got to make sure that you preserve all the evidence. Exactly.
So I guess maybe because of the interesting layout of the house, Kendi might have a point here. That the layout of the house might bring doubt to one person getting around in 15 minutes to do it.
Absolutely. Again, the original evidence is always what's important. Always, in every case.
Does it concern you that they were even talking demolition before a trial?
Yeah, if I was a defense lawyer, I wouldn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Right, you're a defense lawyer. You're looking for every piece of material that can help your client, and you do not want evidence being destroyed.
Why would the prosecution be okay with it and not be objecting to that?
They shouldn't be, in my view.
They both should want it preserved.
They both should want it preserved. Again, that's speaking generally, right? This specific case, there are, I'm sure, arguments that they have laid out already in light of what may happen with the house one way or the other.
Yeah. It's just so crazy to me to think of people going back in there after it's been like it was all boarded up and everything, and they took all the boards off, all the doors and everything, and it was just really eerie to see them back at the crime scene. Another thing, what was I going to ask about that? Shoot, now I forgot. Yeah. Oh, this is what I wanted to bring up. Island Thrifts brought up. They literally rebuilt the Unabomber's shack, his cabin or whatever, for his trial. I thought that was crazy. They had it on like a trailer, and they actually had the actual cabin.
Yeah, sometimes that'll happen. Sometimes that'll happen. That requires government resources, and in cases where it's necessary, they'll do that. Sure.
So Island has another good point. So in the Jodi Arias case, they did use the 3D imaging, and we saw like the people for the first time, like all of that. What worries me about that, Dmitry, is that I feel like anything digital can be altered, and it brings all of that, just weird, like AI, like all these weird things can be done now. And it just feels like like you said, the real thing always, would be best. But could that be something in the future that could be, something that's brought up? Like,
I'm sure.
Hey.
Look, right? Think of what a trial is. A trial, the definition, right, is a journey to get to the truth. What better way to do that than provide only the original materials? Only. Now, for sure, right, you can have experts come in and testify about certain things. But when you enhance something, quote unquote, you, by definition, manipulate it. Not in a negative way. It's just you change the way people see it. And that's always a problem, right? Because you compromise the originality of the evidence, no matter what. That's a problem.
Yeah, Meg, it's called the FARA. I did a video on it. It's called like it's FARO or Faro. I think it's Faro 3D imaging that they are using. But it is pretty fascinating that they can do that, but
Yeah.
it's also
Technology is great when applied to these things. You just have to be careful to not manipulate things and create problems. That's all.
yeah, like with the DNA thing too. That's gotten really huge.
Right, but DNA is different than imaging, right? DNA is a science. Defense lawyers hate DNA, right? DNA is
Right, it's an exact science.
it's an exact science as much as there can be one, right? I
Mhm.
mean, if you find DNA somewhere, there's virtually no other chance that the person to whom that DNA is linked wasn't there. I mean, it's like
Right.
impossible virtually.
Which is why Brian Koberger's defense is trying to get that thrown out based on how it was, how the family tree information was used after the DNA was collected from his father.
Oh, absolutely. The gathering of the DNA isn't all that's important. It's the analysis of it and all that other stuff, the preservation
Yeah,
of it.
because this dude was sitting in his house when they busted in and raided his parents' house. He was sitting in there in his shorts and a t-shirt with latex gloves on, dividing his garbage into Ziploc baggies, separate baggies. So
Yeah.
that's probably why they had to like resort to getting his dad's, because he was, you know, hiding his DNA so well.
Perhaps, yeah.
Have you ever heard of a defendant hiding their DNA that well?
That well, maybe not, but the defendants oftentimes try to do stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially with his schooling, right? In criminal justice. He would have learned how to process and like preserve or not, maybe not process, but preserving a crime scene.
Yeah.
And
Being a good criminal is kind of like being a good businessman. In my experience, that's not something you learn in school, you know?
I've heard that too. Because a lot of people think, oh, he has all this training, like he knew how to pull stuff off. But what I think is that because he specialized in like the digital side of things, was that he could have manipulated things during the course of his planning that had to do with digital forensics and, you know, maybe hacking into things or, you know,
Right.
learning how to do backdoor into things like that. But as far as being the perfect murder, I don't think so. Or there
Yeah,
wouldn't be DNA on the knife sheath.
Yeah. There's no checklist for these things, you know?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, I don't think we have any more questions. I know it's about 40 minutes. Right on cue. All right, Dmitry. Well, thank you for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
We really appreciate you answering all of our crazy questions. So thanks again.
Anytime, and anybody can email me, whatever you need.
Yay. All right. Sub up to Dmitry, and we'll see you later. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
You're welcome. See ya. All right. Here we are. I mean, that was a lot of questions in a short amount of time, but had to get them out. We got to nail them down when they're free. So, yeah. So welcome, or thanks for joining in. And tonight we're going to be streaming the third presidential GOP debate. It was a literal shit show last time. We're not political here, but we like watching what's going on and who's possibly going to be running our country next time. So join me here at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this evening. Make sure that you go over to Dmitry's and hit that subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds. We appreciate him coming on here, and we want to show our support to him any way that we possibly can. And that is a great way, is to head over there and give D-Shack Law a nice like and subscribe on his videos. So with that being said, yes, it's going to be a huge crap show. Chit-cho. So we will be live 8 p.m. tonight. I hope to see you there. Be there or be square. I know. Angie B will be sleeping. I hope you feel better, Angie B. I see you're under the weather. Everybody has some tummy things going on, so I think maybe the tummy bug is going on. Mike Sander, I'm not political. I hate all politicians equally. Same here. So we're not here to cheer one on over the other. We're here to just like be like, what are we watching? So yeah, it'll be fun. Oh, Shell, hey. All right, you guys, have a good rest of your hump day. Enjoy your afternoon. And I'll see you this evening. Pop your popcorn. Get all your snacks ready because we going to watch some presidential debate madness. I'll see you guys on the flip side. We're going to dance it out in a minute. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists for more true crime content. And if that's not enough, you can join our Patreon. Don't have a tinfoil hat? It's okay. We'll make you one. It's that easy. See you guys in the next video.
See you later. Bye.
I don't give a damn. I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. You talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, damn. I don't give a damn. You wanna be with me. You wanna feel something real, but I'm feeling differently. You're making plans to get to friends, but don't wanna face the fact that I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. Staying up late, sleeping all day, dreaming about Cadillacs. Buying new shoes, hanging by the pool, sipping on Coke and Jack. Calling my phone when you feel alone, but I'll never call you back. 'Cause I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. I don't give a damn, I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. You talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't